Good to see you all. Ingrid Kennedy here is definitely a pleasure. It's been a little while since last time we saw each other. If I go back, I think it was July 18th, so something like that. Wow, it's been a little while, so it's good to see you all. And the purpose of today, Irene, if we can just have the agenda up, that would be perfect. Just to go over the agenda for all of us, and then we will go ahead and move forward with the objectives of today's meeting. Thank you so much, Irene. So for the purpose of today, we have a couple of objectives that we want to make sure that we meet today, and that is to engage in a retrospective discussion regarding the work of the commission so far to date. Also, to review the proposed legislation related to remote learning, to review the future role of the members of the commission, and then to identify, if it's possible, next meetings, topics, things that we want to do moving forward. So that is the objectives for today's meeting. So we will start with opening remarks by our commissioner, and then we'll go ahead and move forward with Leslie doing the roll call. Commissioner?
Thank you so much, Ingrid, and to commission members. It's great to be back. I feel like we're getting the band back together. The work that we did that was delineated for us, we all determined that we were not going to disband after that report submission, because there's more work to be done and to do that together. So appreciate, in the midst of a lot of busyness around us, that we take the time to just get back together and really outline our work moving forward, because we know the work was certainly not finished and that there's more to be done. So I just really want to put my voice in the space and thank you for the work that was already done, the work where we are today talking about, and the work that we're going to be doing moving forward, which together, I believe, we will be able to respond to what we're tasked with in a way that is certainly responsive and in the best interest of our state as we work together as partners. So great to see everyone, and thank you very much. Back to you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I just want to double check. I think we do have a new member today, Irene. I just want to make sure that Tiffany Violet from CAS has joined us, just to welcome her. Not yet.
So yes, we do have a new member that was appointed to represent CAS. As we know, our friend and colleague Rosie is no longer with us. We're happy for her, but Tiffany has not joined the meeting as of yet.
Thank you so much for that, Irene. Thank you. So with that, Leslie, can we go ahead and move to the roll call?
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, I'm actually going to start with Tiffany Coet. I know she's not here, but I'm just going to mention her still.
Sure. I think
she's actually
coming in
right now. Do you want me to pause on roll call so she can introduce herself?
Sounds good, Leslie. Thank you so much. Tiffany, good morning. Good morning. Welcome. We were just talking about you.
Oh, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. I had a little trouble connecting.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us
this morning.
We are all trying to get used to getting back into some of the virtual spaces that we have not been for a little while. So this is one of those virtual spaces. We have not seen each other since July. So we're just welcoming all the members back. And with that said, we wanted to welcome you. That's what I mentioned. We were talking about you. We were looking for you. So you are right here. We wanted to welcome you today and have you introduce yourself to the members of the group, if you don't mind, please.
Thank you, Ingrid. I'm Tiffany Coet. I am with Connecticut Association of Schools, CAS. I joined in August and took over for Rosie when Rosie re-retired. Reviewed when I first was invited to the commission. I had reviewed some of the information from last year, but I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tiffany. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to your contributions to the membership. Thank you. So Leslie, we can go ahead and start with the roll call. Now that Tiffany is here, look at that. We have the forum.
Okay. Tiffany is actually going to start our roll call. Tiffany Coet.
Here.
Doug Casey.
I'm here.
Kate Diaz. Dr. Karen Dubois Walton. Dr. Charles Dumais.
Good morning, everybody.
Catherine Gabrielson.
Good morning, everybody.
Ed Klanowski.
Here.
Tim Larson. Michelle Levy.
Here.
Lauren Mancini Everett.
Here.
Francis Rubinowitz.
Good morning, everyone.
Dr. Evelyn Rubles Rivas.
Good morning.
Lon Sedman.
I'm here. Simon, yep, I'm here.
Sorry about that. Amy Weltsey. Roll call's complete.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you. So the next item in the agenda will be the approval of the minutes that we the minutes from July 18. Commissioner, if you can go ahead and propose the approval.
Thank you again, and we usually do consent on these to basically find out from folks if you're all in agreement with the minutes or if there are any changes that you'd like to make to it. So the space is open. I think it was sent out. Do we have consent to accept the minutes as noted?
Yes.
All right, I see the nods, so I think we're all good here. Ingrid, I think we're good. I think we have agreement to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you. So at this time, now we have taken care of all the formalities. Now let's get comfortable. Let's have the conversation regarding a retrospective perspective since our last time together, in addition to the when the submission of the report to the General Assembly. So at this time, Irene, do we have some slides for this part of our section together?
As you can see, there's 3 questions that we can engage in. I'm just trying to present. Well, I'll leave it there. There we go.
Thank you, Irene.
So as you can see, there's 3 basic questions here to kind of look back and think about what we should continue to do and what should we start doing. So this aligns with that opening, like what has been the work that we're continuing to do and think through, and how to move forward with the tasks that are before us. So Ingrid, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Irene. So if we could now, this will be an open dialogue, and I'm going to just ask the members of the commission just to jump in here to just have a conversation since July 18, since the submission of the report. What have you heard? Comments from your constituencies, some of the things that you feel. I just want to remember everyone, for those who we went through this process, our recommendation that it was submitted was that it was not feasible to have a statewide remote learning commission. However, the report expanded on that, indicating that there were some recommendations, things to be considered regarding remote learning across the state. So at this time, if we can just pause and do some retrospective and think about and just put forward some of the things that you might have heard. And I'm also going to have our colleagues from the State Department of Education jump in here as well, because I'm aware that a lot of things are happening, and our colleagues at the department are also engaged in a few things as a result of the report and the work that we have done together. So why don't we go ahead and start and see who would like to put their perspective forward and share what have they heard? Even if you have not heard anything, that's a perspective as well. We want to hear from you because sometimes we feel, oh, we have to be hearing something. Sometimes if we don't hear anything, it's also a good thing for us. So I see the Kathy Gabrielson Go ahead, you can provide your perspective. Thank you for raising your hand to remind us that we have to do that. Thank you.
I had to find it. They changed everything about Teams.
Yeah, it has been a few updates since our last time together.
I guess the feedback that I have is not necessarily directly related to our recommendations, but to the current legislation that's been proposed. It was originally in SB 1200, I believe. And my memory is a little bit faulty, but I think it was in section 3 where they addressed providing or requested that remote learning, simultaneous remote learning with live instruction be allowed for students with IEPs, PPTs, required that to be provided to them, as well as to students with 504 plans. And that was something that CONCASE provided verbal and written testimony to support. We think that that is something that does need to be considered for our students with disabilities, especially those who are in homebound situations because of medical scenarios where they have extended absences and still need to be connected with their school, their community schools, or whatever their school of enrollment is, as well as their peers and teachers while they're dealing with those issues.
Thank you so much.
That's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, and Kathy.
And Kathy, I'm jumping in. I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand, but I just wanted to piggyback after Kathy. We're going to move into a little bit of that, more of that discussion in a little bit. Kathy, Laura Stefan, our legislative liaison and chief of staff, is going to join us to just share a little bit more about the proposed legislation. So I know we can come back to that to talk some more about it. So, but thank you for putting it in the space, because we anticipated that that was something we needed to talk about as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fran?
You know, I actually have heard very little from superintendents. I do think they are taking advantage. Some are taking advantage of being able to do some courses at the high school level, not unlike we were doing before the pandemic, by the way. We were doing courses at the high school level in partnership with community colleges and universities. So that's not different. I'm puzzled because I have had, and there is legislation coming forward, I have had members of the legislature approach me and say, look, I know you're on the commission. I know the commission said no to a statewide remote learning school, but couldn't we just have a small one? And I don't know what the difference is. You know, if you have a statewide remote learning school, how do you have a small one? You know, I'm not sure of the difference in that. So I'm anxious to hear from my my colleagues about how you do something like that. You know, because I think much of the infrastructure, you know, platform, et cetera, that you need for any remote learning school would still be necessary for a small one.
Thank you, Fran. I'm processing the question as well, so I'm curious to hear what our colleagues have to say about it. Alon?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of opportunities to bring things to school board members, both at our CABE conference and also just at our executive level meetings at the CABE offices. And generally, there's never been much interest, I think, on the part of school boards for having some of the remote learning schools I've talked about in the past. I do think there's some interest in as I mentioned before, you know, inter-region collaboration on things related to this and other kinds of joint educational activities, but there doesn't seem to be much disagreement amongst the Board of Ed community over the recommendations we made.
That's wonderful. That's so good to hear, Alon. Thank you so much from the perspective of the boards of education. So thank you for bringing that perspective to the space. Others? I don't see. Okay, seeing no other questions. Oh, Doug, go ahead.
So, I guess for me, kind of an obvious question, since the General Assembly requested the report, are there any highlights from the General Assembly and their response to the report, the feedback that you've received?
Thank you for the question, Doug. I see the commissioner. Yes, Commissioner.
And so, Doug, that is great. And Laura, if Laura is on, I'll have her here as well. I have not gotten any specific questions from sending it over as we normally do. We send over lots of reports, and I've not gotten any specific question. But Laura, is Laura on with us?
She is.
Okay.
Yes,
Laura,
sorry,
yeah.
I am on. I missed the question. I apologize.
No, that's okay. So Doug was just asking from our report, the Remote Learning Commission report that we submitted to the General Assembly, whether we've heard anything from members there. And I said, I have not specifically gotten any questions or comments. And since Laura sometimes go over there and walks the hallways, I don't know if anybody's seen you and ask any questions either.
No, I have not received any specific questions about the report either.
So Doug, that's the response to that. But in a few moments, we'll talk about the proposed legislation, and I don't know if it was influenced at all or just separately done with the, not looking at the report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks, Laura.
And I'm interested as well, though, it's just a follow-up. I saw people were nodding when Fran was asking and whether folks had any other thoughts about small school. And it's making me wonder, Fran, if that's why we had the proposal that's there right now, which we'll pivot to in a little bit. But anyway, I see you ahead.
It's hysterical because the whole point of this commission was to decide whether we're in or out. And we decided that it's not appropriate by and large, although there's limited usages that would be. But even in the limited usage category, even if you were going to do something for high school seniors and juniors, let's really narrow it, you would still build a single platform for the entire state community of high school juniors and seniors. You'd be an idiot if you built one for Meriden. I mean, that's just stupid. So it's a stupid question. And my more serious comment is we spent a lot of time and energy on the report. It was very sophisticated analysis. It was a very disciplined approach to the conversation. We wrote what I think is a pretty clear and thorough report. I'm a little pissed off, to use a generic phrase, that we got no legislative feedback, no attention. Did you even deliver a report on the report to the legislative committee that wrote the law that said we had to go and do this? I'm annoyed because I've been around for a real long time. And many of these commissions are ways to take the topic and delay it, push it off until it dies a natural death. And I'm suspicious about whether that's in fact what happened here. Any comments from the staff would be welcome.
I would just share, we've made it very clear that we submitted the report. I've referenced that in testimony about pieces of legislation as well. If I'm not mistaken, we noted that in our testimony. Laura, you can keep me honest on that. We referenced the report. That it is there. I would say that there's so much on everybody's plates that, it could be one of those things that's there. But, commission members, and I said, we have an opportunity in our discourse and all the communication that we do that hopefully, I know Lana's talked about it, a friend, that others of us in our different spaces representing our organizations, Ed, will use this opportunity as we see legislation to remind our policymakers that this body did exist and did do this work and recommend that folks take a look at it as they contemplate additional pieces of legislation.
Lon, I'm going to ask, I see your hand is still up. Is that something? Okay. Fran, same to you. I just want to double check if there is another perspective because the hand's up. Okay.
Needs
perfect.
to go down.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, for the perspectives. And I'm going to echo Ed's comments as a facilitator. The approach that we took to develop research and really put forward the report was comprehensive in nature, and it was purposely done that way to ensure that the product that it was going to be submitted as requested by the legislation really took account of everything that it was requested. And we even went beyond. So when I heard Fran's comment regarding the question, yet you did not approve it, so somebody's reading it. So it might not be publicly, somebody is reading it, somebody has read the report at that level, and they are thinking about, okay, if this is not possible, then what can be possible? And to the commissioner's point, maybe that is the result of some of the new language, the new legislation that is put forward that we will be hearing today. So I just want to, for us, and I remember when we established and we engaged in our conversations together, that we were going to be committed to submitting a report that was going to be comprehensive in nature, and it was going to represent all the perspectives in the space. And I'm really honored and proud to say that we did that. Now where the report move forward and what the report is going to do as an outcome, as the commissioner mentioned, is also part of our own perspective as how do we bring it forward to our constituencies. So that is not a report that is going to be paused. And I know that our colleagues from the department have been doing some technical assistance to support some of the districts and engaging in some conversations regarding some of the efforts that we have put forward. So Irene, I see that you have raised your hand. Yes, of course. Go ahead, Irene.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. So two things. I do want to go back, Commissioner, as you asked to keep us honest. Yes, on March 15th, in the department, in the commissioner's testimony, there were comments related to Senate Bill 12-1200, I think Catherine had referenced, as well as Bill 6880. So we did provide testimony and information related to the work that we've already done and our thinking on what was being proposed. So we did do that. Speaking to the technical assistance, so the question of looking back and what are we currently doing? So I think the report and the standards for remote learning gave a lot of information for districts to think through. So I can speak for myself and the technical assistance that I was engaged in with districts, and there were essentially like 3 takeaways for us. Certainly, to Lon's point, they're looking to do collaborative. So there's a lot of designs around how to do this as a collaborative. And what is interesting in that, and whether it's an individual school that's happening now or an individual school for the future for 23-24, the takeaways are that they're being very thoughtful about their design and really asking us some critical questions because they don't want it to fail. So all the things that they need to consider, and I can tell from the report, the commission report, everything that we put in there, they're taking that and using that in their design to say, well, how do we code our school? How will we transport students? How do we allow for access on campus or not? How do things follow the child? So there were a lot of great considerations that were being shared and we were talking through. What's the platform? You know, if we're in a collaborative, do we have individual course management systems, or do we need a singular one so that we have a single flow of information? How do we report attendance? You know, these are the key questions they're asking. The other one is communication. What does that communication plan look like? Because they realize that families, whomever is involved with these students that might be enrolled in a remote learning environment, we need to be very thoughtful about our communication. And I'm speaking on behalf of these schools that we talked with. They want to, as they start to think about the communication plan up front, they say that it impacts the design of their environment, specifically around policy, procedure, enrollment, communications with families, the training, the required training, and how do we measure it? So those are some key things. The last takeaway was we need to start small. So if we start small, we can build a prototype and see what works. And it will help us kind of use design thinking, if you will, be iterative in their design. So in all of the different groups I spoke with throughout this year to date, those were the 3 takeaways: being very thoughtful, using our guidance to develop their design and plan, communicate early and often, and start small. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Irene. Any questions for Irene regarding the direct connection with the school districts? Okay. Commissioner?
Certainly, and Irene, thank you very much. And it just making me think, though, at this point, and this, again, this group did such a great job with the guidelines that we placed out there, which was for the high school age grade band. And I'm now thinking, yeah, is there work to be done now? Are we hearing things that are feedback from the guidelines itself? We always don't want to lock ourselves into, you know, the product, and we can always revise, improve as we go forward. However, I'm thinking about the younger age group, and I think we're talked about at some point we may need to revisit this because that was contemplated and designed for high school. Anyway, we may not have answer to that, but that just nudged my memory here in this space that we may need that to be a part of our work plan going forward. As we're revising that document as well. So sorry, I just added more work to our plate.
I love your nudges. Your nudges are always great. So the feedback around the 9-12 guidance has been positive. The thing is that they say that they're very comprehensive, and it's a lot. So I think that's good. It causes a moment to pause and really consider in their design, how might you meet the priority standards that we've outlined, which are the ones that are bolded. So I have heard positive things, but that yes, they are indeed comprehensive. You are correct. We do need to develop the K-8 standards. So the work that I've done to date is just what's the project plan, so that scope of work. And I have not failed to consider the commission in that design, and the commissioner knows what my project plans look like. So trying to outline all of the deliverables. So the work itself has not begun because I'm researching with the group that we, NSQ, that informed the 9-12 guidance, because they have work that they're doing too. So from a national perspective. But I think we would do the same thing if, like, convening focus groups. You need teachers in that space to be able to share what should we consider in that K-8 design, working with NSQ, and maybe there's other organizations we need to consider. So that's where this think tank is very helpful in that work.
Thank you, Irene. I see Fran has a question.
Yeah, just a question, Irene. When we're talking remote learning school, I'm only hearing of one district. Are there more than that?
There are a few more, and like I said, some collaborations between ARESC and surrounding districts, but they're in the beginning stage of like really thinking about it and what it could look like. So what they'll share is, here's my question, or here's how what I'm hearing from my group, like empathizing with their community, and here's what I'm thinking. And so just talking through it. So, but yes, you're right. There's like one district that's really doing a lot right now, but the future could be more than that. But they're thinking right now.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, just wanted to double check. Thanks.
Sure.
Lon?
Yeah, I just had a question about scheduling. I think one of the biggest issues for collaborations, either with districts or with the RESC, is the fact that everyone's schedule is just slightly different. And I think that might be an area where, you know, hopefully not through legislation, but perhaps, you know, through support, that we can figure out some creative ways, if there are restrictions in regulation or even in statute that prevent schedule flexibility. I recall back to actually the 90s when this concept of remote learning was first begun, where there was actually fiber optic cabling run to all these different schools in my neck of the woods, rooms built, cameras purchased. They had these beautiful remote learning rooms that never got used because every high school was on a different schedule and they couldn't get kids in the seats at the same time. So I can see that being a big impediment. And I don't know how you solve it other than getting people to work together, but if there's some restriction on it, that might be something to look at.
The only thing, it's a great question. That master schedule can be a bear, but in the one group that we met with for the collaborative, they were thinking about how to align their master schedules to ensure that the students are can participate and not locked out, and that there were no barriers to that. So it's a good point.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Irene, for the perspective coming from, the technical assistance and support to the districts. So I think that this is a great segue, if we don't have any other questions from the group, to move into the summary of the report. Irene, at this time, so I don't know if this is something that you are going to facilitate, and if Ajit is with us, or you're going to walk us through it.
Sure, I can certainly start, and I know that the commissioner is very proud of the work of the CCERC, so she may also want to share. Ajit will be joining us in just a couple of minutes, but we did share it, and it had been posted to the website, so I know we probably all have not read it, perhaps, I don't know, but what's important is there's the executive summary and the recommendations. And I think there's a few key things, and certainly when my colleague Ajit joins, he'll kind of let us know what are the caveats to be reminded of as you read the report, which appear on page 7, that let's just be mindful that the teacher survey had a low response rate, and participants may not have been representative of the overall teaching population. However, it did inform this report. There were a number of goals that were outlined, and I really appreciate how this was laid out for us to understand what did the focus group provide specific to that goal. But certainly page 9, which has the recommendations, there are 8 in total recommendations for page 9 and 10 that is interesting because it does speak to the report that we developed as well as what we have outlined in our standards. So, and if you have not seen that, providing resources and guidance to support safe in-person learning, ensure that all districts have adequate instructional technology and that professional learning. This commission was very thoughtful in that you need that professional learning. And access to curriculum resources, whether it's remote or hybrid. Carefully consider the challenges of concurrent hybrid instruction. We talked a lot about that. That speaks to scheduling as well. The assessment of student academic progress. Social emotional well-being comes up twice in the recommendations of this group. Really focus on providing those adequate supports. How do you support families so that they in turn can support their students? Their children, really design a plan that mitigates the strain on educators. Again, this speaks to that thoughtful design process, design thinking, and then acknowledge and reward educators' sacrifices and commitments. So I'll pause there. I mean, that's the outline. What's nice is that it really is just a 10-page document, so it's easy to read. And like I said, Ajit will be joining us, but we can pause for a moment. I see the commissioner may want to add more to what I shared. You'll just need to unmute.
Yeah, we just, thank you.
Sorry about that. I always take the opportunity, and Ajit will certainly get into the details, to talk about the research collaborative that we have established here in our state, and one for all of us to be very proud of, that we do have research and evidence to support the work that we are doing. And so we have a great website now with the research collaborative, and you'll see I think 30 plus researchers from across all these private and public institutions in our state that are really so well poised and positioned for looking at COVID investments in the state, that we wanted to make sure that our investments are actually having an impact. And so the Research Collaborative have looked at our summer enrichment programming. They've actually done this now about remote learning. There are other ones in the hopper. They've done our learner engagement and attendance program, which probably now is a national best practice. And so when we answer the question, kind of the so what are we investing in and is it working? We do have this research collaborative that is doing this work for us. So this was also one of the studies that they took on. And again, as Irene said, very proud of this, that we're doing in Connecticut. And they are so really supportive of being able to do this work from the higher ed institutions to support K-12 education here in our state. So I just really want to put that up because every chance I get, I want to really highlight that we do have that ability here in our state to know what's working and to learn from it so we can inform our policy and practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Kathy?
Thank you. I had a question. I know that very often we use the word teacher to describe, according to the statute definition, anybody working in education who holds a certificate, basically, right? But were administrators included in this? Because I see a very distinctive difference between students, families, classroom, and frontline teachers. But as an administrator, as somebody who represents administrators, and as a colleague to many, whether they're administrators in special education or principals or curriculum folks, that seems to be a group that really isn't identified or included in this. And very honestly, I'm seeing people leave those positions in huge numbers because of the burnout from pandemic and what has come down as a result of it. And, Fran, I don't know if you're hearing that from superintendents about losing people, but I'm watching people walk away from pensions at the administrative level. And yes, we make more money than teachers. We have more responsibility than teachers, and we go into the job knowing that. But at some level, I think that what the administrators are doing needs to be looked at as well. Because we're hurting too. So I don't know if we're included in the teacher definition of this survey, or if there's something else happening with administration, but I think that needs to be looked at as well.
So Kathy, thank you. On cue, Ajit is here. Hi, Ajit. So that he can answer that question. And I don't know if Fran may want to respond to that as well too, but Ajit can tell us who were in the survey.
I haven't, I'm sorry, I'll just tell you, Kathy and everyone, the word was we were going to lose so many superintendents, and the truth of the matter is we haven't lost any more during COVID than we lost prior to COVID. There are lots of stressors on superintendents, but I will say to you that I'm not sure that we have properly, in any context, whether it be remote learning or any context, captured the principal's voice enough. So I'm hoping that we, going forward, do more of that. And that's why I'm happy Tiffany's here.
So I'll just respond, Kathy, to your question. I think there were two surveys. One was a district inventory that was done that got responses from every district. And then there was a teacher survey done. And I believe this teacher survey was more focused on teachers, not necessarily targeting principals per se. I will also add that, we're looking, the remote learning audit is sort of looking backward at what happened. And we've talked a lot about those things, but there is also a new study that's in the works that's being led by the Research Collaborative that's looking at leader teacher perceptions and supply and turnover. So that is sort of doing a broader look at that statewide, but also in depth with case studies in certain districts. So that is also in the works.
Thank you, Ajit. Kathy?
So I want to thank you for that, Ajit. I think it's really important that a leader, folks who are holding 092 certifications and are actually functioning in those realms, regardless of whether they're a building administrator, a curriculum administrator, or a special education administrator, because each one of those different roles is going to have a very different perspective and needs to be able to provide that input so that it's heard. some of the people who are leaving that I'm seeing are leaving as quickly as they can get out, as soon as they hit that magic number. And we're losing good people, really good people, because of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Dr. Robles?
I actually wanted to point out that I completely agree with Kathy in that sense. I mean, I think it's so important that we get the feedback from, you know, administrators in general, like not just the building administrators, but also, you know, curriculum supervisors, special ed, and multi-leaders. Like there's some districts that have what we call it teacher leaders or coaches that work directly with teachers. So that's really, really important.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Ajit, I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add regarding the report in the summary. Irene was able to introduce it to the group and walk us through some of the recommendations. Anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'm sorry, I had the conflict and I was just able to join them, but I'm sure Irene did a fantastic job with it.
Thank you, Ajit. Yes, she did. Thank you, Ajit. And thank you, Irene. Thank you so much. And thank you for the questions and the perspectives. The next part of the agenda is specifically to the new legislation that has been set forward, Bill 68880. And I know, Commissioner and Irene, we have Laura Stefan that is going to walk us through this and open it for the group for any questions and comments that might come up from this new legislation and proposed language.
Sure. Hi, good morning. There is new legislation that has been previously mentioned that is House Bill 6880. There was proposed or there was substitute language that came out of the Education Committee. And it had been, I think, Section 5 originally, and it got switched to Section 4 in the new language that changed what is now considered an eligible student for the purposes of remote learning. So the definition of an eligible student means a student who resides in the state but is unable to attend school in person due to a medical condition or vaccination status. And then the legislation also extends the deadline to not later than January 1, 2024 for the department to submit the plan rather than July 1 of 2023. And the department did submit testimony on that section. The substance of the section did not change, though the section number did. So if you wanted to see the testimony that the department submitted, that is available on the Connecticut General Assembly website. It will just be under House Bill 6880, Section 5, instead of what would now be Section 4.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have questions, comments? Lon?
Just a quick question. I was just looking at the legislation here. So it looks like they're actually proposing again that the department create a plan for the creation of a statewide remote learning school.
Yes.
And is this coming from the committee or is it just one legislator?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I would say there were several legislators that have spoken to me about it. And it was pointedly around vaccinations and, you know, what's happening to those children that don't have vaccinations. They can't attend school. Are they being homeschooled? We've kind of lost the legislators' view was that we've sort of lost track of those kids, and could we be offering a remote school for them? And, you know, my concerns are the same that I brought to the early part of the meeting.
So to be clear, Laura, basically, this is suggesting that the remote learning school, the students eligible to participate would be as identified there. Limited
Exactly.
to that.
There. Yes. Yep.
So you create the remote learning school, but the only eligible students for that school is students who are impacted by medically fragile, maybe students, and students that are not able to participate because of their vaccination status.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Thank you. So am I to understand that by that definition, a student, a PPT or 504 plan is prohibited from considering allowing the student as an accommodation to their IEP or 504 plan, the ability to participate in remote learning if they need to do so? If that passes the way it's worded?
No.
No, I don't think so. I think those things are protected under federal law.
Okay, because in the past, we've wanted our state regs to actually say that so that there is no muddy water or murky thinking around it. And I don't know how we can get that in, because we did ask very specifically under SB 1200 that students with IEPs as well as 504 plans could be considered for that if necessary. But I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Commissioner Ancona, can I step out of the facilitator role for a second? I'm just gonna, can I ask a question for the purpose of clarification? What is the association between this particular new build and the previous bill that called for the recommendations of this commission regarding the feasibility of a remote learning school? Because what I'm reading is the assumption is that there is going to be a remote learning school, and then now is determining the eligible students for that particular remote learning school. So I'm just want to see the distinction and the association, because if the recommendation is there's not feasible, therefore they might decide to make it smaller or whatever that might means. So what is this language going to do to use the Department of Education and to the state regarding a remote learning school when there's no feasibility for having one? So that's Ingrid Kennedy asking the question, not the facilitator. So I'm going to go back to the facilitator role. Doug, you had your hand up. So I just want to put the question in the space to get clarity. But yeah.
Well, I can tell you that they are using existing language that was already there from previous sessions. And all they've done is add new language that very strictly limits who the eligible student would be to what they have said, the medically fragile or medical condition or vaccination status, but all the rest of the remaining language is the same. And then they've extended the deadline to which the department has to submit the report.
So, and maybe say a little bit more there, and with Irene, because the report was always there that we needed to do. And maybe, Irene, could you just quickly just summarize that report? Because I think it helps to answer or to even clarify what Laura just said, because they didn't change that we have to do a few things here in terms of effectuating the school. Can you just clarify? I just want to make sure it's accurate. I'm accurate.
Sure, correct. And essentially, it was also in our report as part of the next steps, because we understood that was in the legislation to submit a plan, the draft request for proposals of like what would be required to actually do this, and any other recommendations related to the implementation of such plan. And that deadline, that was always July 1 of 23, sorry.
Right.
So
now
the
that
content of the plan was the same, yes, and the RFP draft was the same.
But if this passes, then the scope of students would be limited for what it is that we would be developing a plan to effectuate. The and again, but it's not passed, and certainly, I'll let Laura share our testimony with you, and I think that may be helpful.
I mean, I can drop the testimony in the chat. I don't know if, I mean, it's paragraphs long. I'm not sure if I should read it, but we did testify against the fact that it should be limited to just those few groups of students, and we appreciated and agreed with the adjustment of the time to January of 2024 for submission of the report. But I can drop the actual language into the chat.
No, that's okay, Laura. I just wanted to, I didn't want to make sure I was accurate in how we testified on this. So I just wanted people for full transparency to know that we thought the scope was too limited for students that could participate.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. Dr. Robles, then Fran, Doug, and after that, Law.
I think this is not necessarily a question, but I was just reflecting on the statement that Laura just mentioned. And I was thinking about inclusion, right? And I think that, the fact that this is just a specific legislation looking at just a small group of students, that could be seen also as discriminatory because we're not including everyone else. Like, let's say, for example, I'm just giving you, just my perspective. There is a district or a group of parents that are saying, but I would like for my students to be part of the remote learning for some reason, then this could be very exclusively to a specific population. So I'm not sure, we disagree. We said that this was something that we were not actually recommending. Now we're going back to saying that something saying, yes, we could do this in a small, in a smaller ratio, but just looking at the fact that it's just a small group of students benefiting from this could be problematic. This is not a question, it's just my humble opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Robles. Thank you. Fran?
I first have a question and then just a thought. My question, I guess, would be for Laura. I thought that we had legislation prior to COVID that said that all students had to be vaccinated, with the required vaccinations in order to attend public school. If we did a remote school, wouldn't that be a public school? Wouldn't that be a contradiction of another statute, or am I wrong? I'm not an attorney. I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me.
Right. I do not know the answer to that question. I would have to think about that.
It was just something that was a little, it just bothering me. That was my question. My comment is, this commission, I think, is so important, and I do believe that there are tremendous possibilities for remote learning in the broad sense of remote learning, the sharing among districts, the pursuing of online courses, and all of that. That I'm really hoping the commission can pursue. And I kind of feel that the legislature is hampering us because we've got to go back again, or hampering the department as well, because you've got to go back again to, is this remote school feasible? We already said that it was a very difficult thing to do. So I would love to spend time on possibilities and have the commission lead the way, because I do think schools and districts right now are still in recovery mode from COVID and trying their best to move forward in whatever way they can, but they need some impetus to say, hey, have you thought of this? This is a real possibility for you. And I'd love our commission to be, and I guess that's the last agenda item, but I'm hoping our commission can be focused on those possibilities rather than, I'm just not sure I'm not sure where the legislature is going for this, other than to say, you know, we feel badly for the kids that aren't vaccinated. So do I, but you know, how do we accommodate them? I think that's what this is about, and I'm not sure we can. But anyway, that's my thinking.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you. Doug?
Thank you, Ingrid. And I want to echo Fran's specific comments and general spirit of your comments, Fran, because I feel like what I'd love to see with statute is language that talks about may as opposed to must or shall not. I think giving a little bit more agency to local education agencies, that's in their name. I think about Mike Young, who teaches at NEAG, who also serves on the Ellington Board of Education. They've had a blended sort of enhanced accelerated program up in that district for years that ended up getting shut down because of changes in the law that said you can't do this anymore, even though it was working very well. And I think sort of subverting successful programs, or the opportunity for successful programs that really talented people in local education agencies can design and implement, is just, it's not helping the situation. So that's a soapbox comment, but I do think that the broader, looking at this as a broader ecosystem, we could leverage an online platform to do a pilot as we've recommended, see how it goes, see what the demand is. That was a big factor that we talked about in the report. What's the real demand for this? We don't even really know. And then see how that goes. I think that's the smart approach, as opposed to saying there's only one use case for this, and it's for medically fragile, or however it's defined as eligible students. It's just so restrictive. So I'm disappointed to see this. The other thing I would say from a sort of ecosystem perspective, and it goes to the beginning of HB 680, is regarding curriculum. And Fran, you said the opportunity to collaborate across districts and co-create shared resources and shared courses. A plug for GoOpenCT, which the Department of Education has been a phenomenal sponsor and partner with, and the great new curriculum is on there. We should be leveraging that to help encourage co-creation of content. So I guess my closing statement is we can put some tools in place. We have some really, really bright, innovative people in the state. We should be encouraging that kind of innovative behavior, and then the sharing of best practices, as opposed to restrictive language that says, remote learning is only this thing and it's over here in a box. So yeah. I will pause my comments for that.
Thank you, Doug. Lon?
And everything I would say, Doug just said. So I'm agreeing with that. I do have a question. Does the federal law related to special education contemplate remote learning as being the least restrictive environment? Because I don't know if there's some liability there, and it might make sense for us. And I know we're not supposed to be advocating necessarily, but it might be helpful for us to propose an alternative to this to accomplish the goal, which I think, to Doug's point, would involve more district level decision making for what's appropriate in what they're dealing with. Because some districts have more kids without vaccinations than others. So I think that makes a big difference. And most districts have different special education needs than others. And I think it would Probably be really helpful right now for everyone involved with other issues to have the department talking about allowing or creating an opportunity for districts to solve this problem in a different way. What I'm concerned about is that this vote was unanimous. And this is a JF vote, so it's moving. And I don't know if we're prepared to build a remote learning school at this point, given what we just did. So,
thank you, Lon. Thank you, Kathy.
Great question, Lon, about the federal law. So IDEA does not define the least restrictive environment as a specific location. It is based very specifically on the need of the child in question. So, for example, a child who has an other health impairment, say cancer, who's going to be out for sporadic absences or possibly consecutive absences exceeding 10 during a school year, their least restrictive environment during those times could be remote learning. And that could be written into the IEP without federal issue and violating that. So it could actually be written to incorporate that into the program and plan for that child.
Thank you, Kathy, for that. Thank you. Ajit?
Just wanted to second Doug's points and just add, going back to the research room, the impacts on test scores and the impact on attendance in terms of the differences between those who learned remotely and those who learned in person. They sort of disappear in the high school grade. So the original contemplation in the legislation to start with grades 9 through 12 for districts to offer remote learning, that actually is backed up by the findings from our study. So I just wanted to put that in this discussion.
Thank you so much, Ajit. There is so much information in our space right now, and so the levels of expertise and the coalition that we have put together as part of this commission. So, which is a wonderful segue for the next part in going to the final part of our meeting, which is what is the efforts of the commission, the role of the commission moving forward. We just heard there is a bill that it has legs, it has sneakers, and is running a marathon right now, and it looks like it's going to make it to the finish line. So we need to be very aware of that and conscious of that. So I'm actually going to open the space for our commissioner to really share with us her vision, big audacious goals for the effort of this commission moving forward, and then pull us into the conversation, bring us into the conversation, because I heard great things today. One of them, and I will use the word proactive. We have gathered so much information, the time that we have spent together, so much research, there's so much available information out there with the department has done, with the collaboration, the research, there's a lot of information that we can bring to be proactive regarding next steps. So sometimes we need to place ourselves in the position of, rather than being the receivers, to the givers. Givers of information versus the ones they have to receive and provide something, versus how do we provide information to others? How do we give information to others? So something to consider. So Commissioner, I am going to give you the virtual space for you to share with us your vision, your goal for this commission moving forward, and then bring back the group members to say, okay, what other things we can do to support you, the state, and the children and families in the state of Connecticut. Commissioner.
Thank you, Ingrid. And you will hear, you've already unearthed in this space the possibilities of what's possible for us in Connecticut, really to lead the way when we think about remote learning opportunities that can be truly effective and be impactful. And so how do we, as a collective voice, use our collective voice in this space And while you've mentioned the issue of legislation, and certainly I'll be talking to Laura to see what, if anything, that we're able to do as a collective right now with all the expertise and representation of really key organizations, educational organizations here, to have these conversations before we get to the finish line. I think there may be still a little bit of opportunity in that in order to do that. So you all also have your sphere of influence from where you are with your organizations as well. And it would be great for this body, because it's nothing new, right? We've already made a statement that was really well thought out, very comprehensive report. Is there an opportunity for us from an organizational perspective to make sure that this is in the hands of and continue to address again from where we are, and then as a collective body? So certainly we'll be working with Laura to think about what opportunities there could be in that space to do that, because if not, regardless of how creative we want to be, there will be some policy for which we have that responsibility that we have to abide by. So that is kind of the my immediate response in this space about how do we continue to work together. We still have this piece of legislation for a plan, but this commission was also very clear about some intermediate steps that we need to take to get there. And that's in the report that I want to make sure that we're looking at as well. And when I talk about the report, I know Ingrid and Irene, you're very versed on what we've had there. And so we had asked some questions in the report for ourselves in terms of some next steps that we wanted to move to. And I believe we continue to do that as a body. And so we'll need to plan for that as well. So those are, to me, the kind of immediate things, Ingrid, that we and group that we need to be working on. And I'm also open to fine tune that with your thinking, as you've already laid some of those out, that we can certainly be working on together. But I do believe we should not, I'm hoping we don't underestimate what we can do as a body, working together as a commission for, since we've started here, done a really great comprehensive report, and have voice and agency from our individual organizations and collectively, and our collective voice as well. So I hope that just opens the door for other thoughts from members, can add some specificity to what already is, I think, is an ambitious agenda that we have laid out for ourselves that we need to continue to work on.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for that invitation. So I am going to bring our group and say, put your perspective forward. What are some of the things that we need to do next as a commission based on what we have already put forward, what we have already researched and collaborated? And so what are some of the things that we should be doing next? And Laura, I might put you on a little bit on the spot now as well, as I'm listening to the commissioner. Is anything in particular that we can do as a commission to support you as you are the liaison regarding these pieces of legislation moving forward? So it's anything that you will need us to do as well.
Well, the commissioner and I are certainly going to continue. We have had meetings with the chairs of the Education Committee on individual bills. I anticipate we'll have a meeting on this bill going forward, and any individual outreach that members of this body can do to members of the Education Committee and to the chairs of the committee and the ranking members is most welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. So now to the members of the commission, your perspectives and thoughts regarding steps moving forward. Ed?
Yeah, I have a process question. Are we a permanent committee now? Is this what this amounts to, that the legislature is going to propose some things and then look for feedback or advice or constructive criticism from us as a group?
Great question, Ed, and I see the commissioner is ready to answer that question for you.
So the creation of the committee, Ed, did not have any parameters around timelines on it. We had a specific task, but from the very beginning, as I had noted, using the privilege that I have here to say, I really would like for us to be a body that going forward, so we didn't disband after the creation of our report, because I think the voice and this group and agency is so important that as an agency that we're not making decisions independent from your collective thoughts of this group. So I think I'm accurate here that they didn't give us a timeline. They gave us a charge, but didn't give us a timeline. And so I'm saying from the department's perspective, we need you, all of you, as members of this body for the work that needs to be done forward.
So you need two perspectives from us. One, you might come to us as a department for our advice about something you were asked to do or would like to do, and I'm all in on that. But the other role that I'm less clear about is how do we speak to that legislature directly as a group? I mean, we just had some conversation around this bill that got proposed, and I understand how weird bill proposals are. Some die, some get the committee and then die. It's just weird. But you're advising the legislature about that bill. What's our role in that advice, and how can we facilitate that role? I guess is my second question. I'm all in on helping you guys do your job. That's fine.
And thank you very much. And Laura can give some thought to this as well, because what I'm hearing you say, we've asked folks to kind of act from your individual organizations. Your question is, how can we act as a body? And so I think that's a great question, Laura, that we need to think about. Like, is there would we draft communication, for example, that could be from this is the commissions? And so, that's what I'm thinking about. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that if the commission wanted to take a stance on the bill, that's definitely something that they could do, and they could draft a communication to the chairs and the members of the education committee. I think
because many of you have roles that make it difficult for you to speak the truth to the legislature. Not just you, Charlene, but there are other folks here. I'm looking at Doug. People who work with the legislature on all kinds of stuff and can't just spout off. But I could on this particular front. I don't really care if I offend the sponsors of a bill who've made what I think is a mistake. The problem is I'm busy with other stuff, and I don't know when you sort of need either my pen or my voice or whatever you need from me. I need the staff to call us together to say, because I didn't know about this bill, totally ignorant, had no idea it was out there. Here's a bill. We kind of think you folks would want to look at it. It seems to be going either with or against your recommendations. And if it's against our collective recommendations, maybe we collectively would like to say something to that effect. I'd be glad to help. I just can't do that without guidance from you all. I don't think it's fair to assume in my case that I'm reading these bills, because I'm not. But I want to help. And if that's part of our two-pronged future purpose, advising the department, which I'm okay with, advising the legislature, about which I'm going to need some structure and some help. Was that useful?
Yeah, and thank you very much. And Laura, we'll figure out, to your point, we're staff in the commission as well, so we have to figure out how this happens. But I do believe that there's a way for us to say, we presented a report from this commission. We made clear in that report who you all are as members of the commission, that there's probably a way for us to also present a one-pager or something that says this is endorsed, that all of you have endorsed, to share as a commission as well. So I'm sure that there's a way that we can make that happen. But I so appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Ed, for that. The way that you laid out the purposes. So it's very, very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Doug, and then Michelle.
A couple thoughts. One is this work of the Remote Learning Commission, there's a lot of complementary activity between what's going on here and where I serve, which is the Commission for Educational Technology, which some of you may have never heard of, but we've been around for about 20 years, oversee the Connecticut Education Network. Access to technology is sort of why the commission where I serve exists. A couple thoughts is we're developing a strategic plan for the next however many years. This is, I think, putting on our agenda the importance of sort of the philosophy that we talked about today, of empowering every educational institution to fully use technology as in best practices. I think including those kinds of recommendations and work streams would be great. So this is extremely helpful for us in terms of planning. broader base beyond just education, we're also leading what's called the Digital Equity Program. This is a federal program that came out of the Infrastructure Act. We hope to receive about $17 million next year for helping every resident connect and make effective use of technology. And I bring this up because remote learning and the opportunities that learning with technology is a big why. It's a big reason why digital equity matters. It's not just so people can stream Netflix. It's so that people can improve their lives, apply for jobs, learn, engage in telehealth, social emotional connections, all of that. So this is really, really helpful in terms of hopefully moving the state forward on one of those priorities that came out of the CCRC report, which is making sure that there's sustainability, that all students everywhere have access to technology so that they are fully enfranchised to engage in whatever remote learning becomes the best practice that we recommend. So, and the last thing I'll say is, if we do want to reach out to any members of the General Assembly, I can certainly help to amplify that. I can't promise, as Ed said, sometimes I've a bit of a short leash, but we can certainly work with our legislative liaisons to amplify any kind of statements that we feel are warranted. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much, Doug. Michelle and then Fran.
Yeah, just dovetailing or building upon what both Doug and Ed brought up, I think, and this is likely where we're headed, is I think it would be helpful to redefine, since this group was established in response to a specific task. I think redefining the role of this group, what Doug described regarding the other commission, seems like a very appropriate space for early childhood to also be a part of, or to, those are the types of guidance and support. And so far, this commission, I think in the first ask, it was very appropriate. So early childhood was a part of the conversation. I think that was really appreciated. And we may continue to be a part of this commission, but I think redefining and making sure, as an example, early childhood may not fit at the table if the focus is going to be on remote schooling for older grades or older students. So thinking about the definition and who the members are and who needs to be at the table could shift a little. So I think it's an important juncture to kind of do that step. What is our purpose? What is our role, and who needs to be at the table? And, lots of passionate folks here who have a lot to contribute, and I'm happy to be here if I can be helpful. But, just rethinking that, I think, would be very helpful.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you. Fran?
What I brought up earlier, I would just like to continue that train of thought, which is around innovation. And I'm not sure that this commission itself is the body to bring forward the innovation, but I think it is, the commission could easily advocate for some innovative practices that we hear in remote learning going forward. And to Doug's point, I am really concerned that beginning in the 24-25 school year, when all of this ESSER dollars, or the ESSER dollars, are depleted, I'm worried about our most challenged districts and whether or not they will sustain the infrastructure that's needed to be in the 21st century. And I continue to be concerned when I talk about innovation and I talk about district sharing. Yes, I want districts, all the suburbans and everyone to share on world language opportunities and all of that. But I'm brought back to the time in Bridgeport when I couldn't find a physics teacher for my kids. And, I want kids to be able to access that. And I'm not sure we have worked hard enough on that yet, in finding opportunities. And I know we're growing our we're trying to grow our teaching force and take care of our shortages, but kids are only in high school one time. And I think that there are opportunities that could be put in place pretty quickly to get access to some of those courses. So I'm hoping, I'm not saying that the commission should be the body that develops these things, but I think the commission could certainly be a body that advocates for some practices going forward.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you. So I'm being conscious of the time, great perspectives. See, Kathy, go ahead.
Just one last comment, piggybacking on what Fran was saying about high school and shortages and wanting to make sure that kids are getting services. I think there is great opportunity here for us, as I've said in the past, to look at being able to share related services and special education services between districts. As every district, I believe, is facing shortages in personnel services, as well as special education services, as well as with paraprofessionals. So I agree with Fran, and I would want to piggyback on the high school opportunities to also include specific IEP opportunities.
Thank you, Kathy. So it's 10:24. See if we have any final thoughts for the good of the order before we move to the last part of our agenda. Okay. Seeing none. So I'm going to give the floor back to the commissioner to close our meeting. Before I do that, I have a couple of things that I just some notes down for us to consider moving forward. I know Irene has been doing the same thing. Is regarding redefining a central aspect for us moving forward is redefining the role of the members of the commission. What is the purpose of the commission moving forward, and what are some of the tasks that we should be doing as commissioner? And I love the word advising the commissioner and also providing guidance to the cognizant body and the General Assembly regarding anything related to remote learning in the state of Connecticut. So that's what I capture looking at those prompts. So we can definitely discuss more and define those two things and define parameters. What does that look like? Because I also heard very clearly, and I can definitely relate to that, is there is to know what those bills are, and sometimes up to the last minute. They'll say, oh, did you heard about that bill? So I think that we need to make sure that that is something that we create a protocol so that we can be engaging in these conversations when we learn about those bills, so that we can put our perspective forward as well. So, and I love the idea of the innovation. How do we provide support to innovation? How do we bring forward best practices of innovation that are taking place? And also the consideration of what this looks like across every grade level for every single student. So those are some of the things that I have captured based on the conversation today. And we will definitely engage in a conversation with our colleagues at the department as we gather for the future meeting. So Commissioner, I'll give you the floor back to close us. And from my perspective, always thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be with all of you and to hear the perspectives that you bring forward. I always leave re-energized and ready to do more, whatever that more might be, but always ready to do more. Thank you, Commissioner.
So much said. Thank you, Ingrid. I would just close by thanking you. I think this was really great discourse today. Very productive conversations. We have our takeaways and our next steps. And we purposely did not plan another meeting on the calendar because I know we'd have work to do. So we will certainly take all this back with the staff here. And we communicate with you probably certainly online before we schedule another meeting, but we have some tasks to do, some of them more time sensitive. So I'm recognizing that there's some things we need to do right away. But again, my just heartfelt gratitude for this commission, for the membership, for your commitment to our students and the processes that we have to go through. And we look forward to connecting. However you're celebrating, holiday, whatever, I have a safe and an enjoyable time with family, friends, and put yourself first for a bit. Take care of you, which is so important. We take care of others sometimes before we take care of ourselves. And we need to make sure we're doing that as well. So thank you very much. Be safe, be well, until we get together face to face next time.